Hello and welcome back to Fame Under Fire from BBC Sounds with me, Anoushka Mutanda-Dougherty. And for the first time ever, in the room with me, Dr. Shaun Kent from not South Carolina, from London.
From London. I am here. I am minding the gap. I am looking for Paddington Bear. I think he has marmalade. And I want to, God Save the Queen and all that stuff.
Oh, Shaun, she's passed away. We've been through this.
I don't believe you.
We've been through. Shaun is what they say, the first stage of grief is denial.
I don't believe you.
We're on.
I do not believe you.
Shout out to you, Lizzie. Gone but never forgotten. Anyway, I'm glad we're here because the episode today is pretty much about Shaun Kent. So I got him live in the flesh.
favorite topic. My absolute favorite topic.
Period. And I think this is a very fitting episode because we've been talking for ages, since November 2024, going into the Diddy trial and now across pretty much every celebrity legal battle that there's been. And we are always talking about Diddy, Kanye, Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni, you name it, Rebel Wilson. These are the celebrities. This is Fame Under Fire, but the landscape is changing rapidly.
100%.
There are some other superstars in the courtroom and it's oddly you.
Sadly, and we always thought it was going to happen because the court TV in America started because of the Menendez trials. Mm-hmm. And so people were a little bit focused on the Menendez brothers at that point in time. And the reason I talk that up is then that switched and it became the O.J. Simpson trial. And of course, remember, O.J. Simpson had the dream team of lawyers and he had Robert Kardashian, who we know the family he beget. And then we talked about Johnny Cochran, and everybody thought that was going to be the wave, that everybody was going to focus on attorneys. And then it went away. And now with the advent of social media, people being able to watch, folks are starting to focus on the lawyers.
And I think this is really important because perhaps not everybody knows what's going on short form content apps like TikTok.
Right.
There's an infrastructure that's been developed there where if you make a video over a minute long and you get a certain amount of views and you have a certain amount of followers, you're invited into a Creator Fund program and you're encouraged to keep posting videos. And some of the most fruitful topic areas for that has been legal battles. And particularly, I think this started with Diddy because Diddy, there was content, not even every week, every day. That man was getting sued every hour.
And as you know, your algorithm, if you looked at one Diddy video, then all of a sudden you got 75 content creators who are Diddy this. Oh, as you know, when you went to New York, going to the courtroom and people showing up and content creators trying to get into the courtroom because they knew it was a cottage industry that was going to help them make money. And so they were all over it at the time.
The thing is, though, content runs out.
Yes.
And once you've spoken about what came out that day, what was in that lawsuit, etc., what happened in court that day, you don't have anything else to talk about. But the app necessitates that you keep posting. It encourages you because you now have things called creator insights where they say this term is rising up. You need to start making videos about this, etc. So they're now focusing on even the most minute, tiny details. But one of the things that's got increased focus is the lawyers. And also, there are some lawyers out there who do be posting on social media every day. Now, that is Shaun. You haven't missed a day. You have not missed a day since you blew up. I know this because I see your videos every day.
Yeah.
And I have your post notifications on because I'm a good friend.
My bestie.
And it was crazy because you are allergic to technology that you managed to do that every day.
I can't figure out technology. I still can't figure out technology.
But now people know Shaun Kent. You blew up on TikTok around the Diddy trial because you gained 32 million views on one video, and then it's kind of been going ever since. So you have a presence on that platform. But then your trial that you were recently in was on court TV, same as lots of other trials you've done, and people started connecting the dots, going, "That's the guy I follow on TikTok."
It was wild.
Can you talk me through what happened?
Because as you know, we're on all of those platforms, and I like to educate. It's just something that I did as a side job, a side hustle. And I don't want to say hustle because we weren't monetized. We weren't trying to make money off of it. It's just something that I enjoy doing. But still, my priority is trying cases. And we've tried a lot of cases, as you know. And so we had a case. I got involved on it, United States, or I say state of South Carolina versus Rick Chow. Thought nothing of it, just like another case, like a typical case that we'd have involving with court TV in the courtrooms. And what's wild, Anoushka, is I was not fully aware of what was going on outside of the courtroom while you're inside of the courtroom. And it switched quickly from people focusing on the trial to focusing on me. Which I've never had.
But there is a reason. Can you talk through the allegations?
And it's the allegations of the case are different from what made it a big deal. But in the simple parlance, what made it a big deal for the world find out about is Rick Chow is an Asian store owner in South Carolina. And the allegations were that a young man went inside of his store. And when he left the store, that Rick chased him along with his son outside the store and summarily ended up shooting him. Now, what made it such a big deal was that 5-second blurb is the world ended up thinking that Rick Chow, the Asian, shot an African-American male in the back. That's all we heard.
He was 14.
He was 14 years old. And so if you make it even simpler, it became Asian man shoot black kid in back. And then it became Asian man shot black kid in back over stealing a bottle of water. So that became a big enough deal. And then when Rick Chow hired an African-American lawyer, me.
You are?
Yeah, you finally see me in person.
I never noticed.
Never noticed. No, everyone else did. And so we represent him. You know, his family came in and they hired us and we represented him, and it became a national story. And the story began to focus on how could an African-American lawyer represent an Asian man who was accused of shooting a young black child. And so the story then turned into, what is the role of criminal defense attorneys? What is the role of a person to their culture? What is the role of their person to their community? What is the role to the jurist? So it became a edict, if you will, on the practice of law. And then everybody, and I mean, I don't want to say everybody, but I would say 80% of the United States had an opinion on what lawyers' roles in the representation of anybody. And then from what I understand is the trial became a big deal. And then when he got a not guilty on a trial that no one thought was winnable, you know, then it became a bigger deal. And Anoushka, when I say it became a big deal, my family, we got death threats. The FBI was involved. The state law enforcement.
You never told me that. And I was calling every day to make sure they didn't burn your
I don't know if you were one of the threats. I don't be trusting you.
What? What?
I don't trust you, Brits.
That's true. I do threaten to steal from you every time I speak to you.
Yeah, I don't trust you, Brits. And, you know, Saturday is the anniversary of something.
Yeah. And we got you back.
250 years of belt to... Anyway. America. And so it became everyone had a graphic opinion on their position on the role of criminal defense attorneys. And it made me think at one point in time, I thought about one of our conversations that I just gave everybody the bird's eye headline. And that's all people cared about. No one wanted to hear the underlying facts and background of what happened about and what ends up happening. It made me think about some of our conversations that the world cares about headlines.
Yeah.
And then the social media influencer loved the vitriol that was coming with the anger on the conversation. So nobody talked about the underlying story. It's just like, you know, he was found not guilty and 12 people voted for him to be found not guilty. So there was a lot more to the story.
What was the young boy's name?
Cyrus Belton.
So the accusation from a lot of people was that Cyrus was racially profiled by Rick Chow, Rick Chow's wife, and his son.
Yes.
And then the further accusation was that they then hired an African-American lawyer for optics, essentially, to the jurors, which we're going to get into in a second. But I've spoken to you so many times about this because as a journalist who reports on all kinds of trials, you have to have a respect for the judicial process in its entirety. But I understood what a criminal defense attorney is, and I understand like how you live your life and how you practice, but I don't really get it from, like, you can understand something in theory, and then when you see somebody you know do it, it's like, oh, that's what this is like. And we've spoken so many times about different cases that you've taken people you've represented that they've been accused of all sorts of things.
Awful. Oh, we've represented awful. I mean, we've represented people accused of awful allegations, and you cannot sit there at one point in time and say, well, I'm going to represent you because I think you're a good person, but I'm not going to represent you because you think you're a bad person. And as you and I talked about, what would end up happening a lot is people were so, and I don't mean this negatively, they were shocked to see that I'm actually a lawyer. You know what I mean? Social media has created this world where they're like, if you read a lot of the comments, like, wait, he's a lawyer. Like, he actually does trial work. Wait, that's our lawyer. We don't like him anymore because he's actually a lawyer. I'm like, wait, where did you think these conversations were coming from?
Yeah.
And what would also happen is I think you've seen a lot of the posts we talked well before we took on the representation of Rick Chow, whereas I've represented some very unpopular people, and you take these cases, and then when you said it in practice, the world was like, yeah, go get him.
Yeah.
And then when it actually happens, it's like, boo, we hate you.
Yeah.
And that
then
was wild.
There was a part of me that was like, did he have to take that case? And then I'm like, well, what does that mean? Because he's committed to the job. Like, it was an internal kind of thought process that I was going through, and I'm like, but you addressed it.
I addressed it head on.
But when I spoke to Shaun, because I was doing daily welfare checks, not that I could help because I'm a million miles away, but I was like, hope he's not dead. We need him for the podcast.
Fair.
But I was calling because people were like threatening to go to the law firm. People were posting pictures of your family on TikTok.
Absolutely.
And you said, I know I've got to address it. And that surprised me because typically with lawyers, we just think of them as like they do their job. Maybe they cut their check and then they keep it stepping, and that's what they do. But you were like, I know I need to speak. I speak every day on lots of different topics. I need to address this. And you did put out a video about it. And it did change a lot of the conversation around, well, actually, perhaps this is a really talented African-American lawyer. We're seeing there's two things happening at once. This might be a tragedy for the community, but at the same time, we're seeing an example of Black excellence. That was one of the conversations that was taking place online. And then we started to see a switch up. Oh, Shaun Kent's an amazing lawyer. You need Shaun Kent on your team. And so we had this other case with Carmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf. I think I'm pronouncing
You said
it
perfectly, yes.
And then all of a sudden, that's a African-American boy who stabbed a young white boy, same age, I think, at school.
Same age.
And everybody was like, well, you should have had Shaun Kent on your team. And this was within a period of time of like 2 weeks.
One.
Yeah, because I was like, they're going to kill Shaun. And then the next week I was like, or crown Shaun. I'm not sure what's happening.
It's going to sound so egotistical, but it should be studied. Like, it should be studied that 2 weeks in American jurisprudence of the way that things switched so quickly. Like, the Tuesday after trial, we were, I think, the #1 trending topic on TikTok, but not for a good reason.
Oh, no. And I didn't like that. I'd swipe and I'd be like, no, this is my friend. Like, what's happening?
It was not for a good reason.
It wasn't funny.
Like, it was not he's so good. And it was, and then it switched. Like, the Carmelo Anthony verdict came back, and I enjoyed the fact that the world started understanding the role of criminal defense attorneys a little bit more and how they can make a massive difference. But it was really wild how it switched. And I'm not, we didn't care either way, because like I said, the people who were still wanted our representation were still calling us, still, like, even after people were being negative, the representation, people still calling, because this is what we've always done. And so to sit here now and say, oh my God, I'm so worried and so upset, I was just like, oh no, it was on a bigger scale than normal, but you can't change who you are. You can't change your profession.
But that was the first time that's happened to you, right? Where it's like they were putting pictures of your family in.
That was the first time with families. Like, we've gotten threats before. And I mean, if you think about it, it's an adversarial process.
But people creating content
yeah.
about it. That's like, because it came at a time, I mean, that universe of creators is pretty well established off of the back of Diddy and then into Blake Lively. There's a lot of people who are making money out of this.
Yeah.
And suddenly you were the person that they were talking about. But this isn't the first time that this has happened. We've seen a few other lawyers who've kind of cemented a position in the cultural conversation. Brian Steele being one of them. Drake has a song around Brian Steele. If you were with us for the Diddy trial, you will know he was brought on as one of Diddy's criminal defense attorneys. And he famously won the Young Thug trial and famously said that Thug stands for truly humbled under God. That particular clip of him saying that as a defense to them accusing that Young Thug was like an aggressor and violent, and he's saying, well, his name is actually, it's giving blessing to God, saying this is why I'm here to serve God, truly humbled under God. That's what Thug means. That clip went viral.
Yes.
And then suddenly Brian Steele was everywhere. So that was kind of like an amuse-bouche of what happened with you.
Yeah.
But then you had this Drake song. So now he's cemented in the culture as like, if you've got Brian Steele on your case, you're going to win because he wins the unwinnable.
Absolutely.
We've got this man who's referred to as the $1 billion lawyer. Your friend is Drew
Findlay. Yeah.
And 50 Cent's making a documentary about it. I was like, since when are we getting to, like...
Documentary about the lawyers. And
Yeah.
Drew is a great lawyer, and he's an amazing person.
Because he represents like half of hip hop.
He is literally the hip hop lawyer.
Yeah.
If you get in, and here's the wild part. I don't want to say you get a niche, but what ends up happening is he probably represented one person involved in hip hop, and then, and then they tell two friends, and then they tell two friends, and then they tell two friends. And that started happening to our law firm. What's ended up happening, and we've been 25 years. You know, we've never had trouble getting cases or doing a good job, but now all of a sudden it's like, oh, unwinnable case, call Shaun Kent. And that's how it used to be. And now it's
God damn.
And now I'm just like, oh my goodness. And so the phone calls we had, I could blow your mind with some of the negative and crazy phone calls we had. We had one phone call where a man called in, and I happened up, they're like, he wanted to speak to me, and I talked to him. He's just like, hey man, I just want to let you know, on one of your posts, one of your things, I called you a blank, 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 and just told me every nasty thing he had said about me. And I was just like, okay. And he paused. He's like, my nephew's in trouble, though. I really need you. I was just like, well, why would you lead with all the nasty stuff? And his response was, well, I didn't want you to go look it up and then like fire me or something later. So I just want to get it right out of the open. I was like, okay.
Yeah, fair. But that's crazy. But there are some significant impacts of that
Yeah.
I don't think we're aware of how this is going to reverberate, particularly in that sphere of like trainee criminal defense attorneys, people at law school, because not only is it now scarier, you take the wrong case and everybody's bored and they need something to create content about, and you're on court TV, suddenly you're getting death threats, etc. Yes, there was always going to be a spotlight on you if you take a case with somebody that the culture had decided they don't like, but this is another level, because there's a monetary incentive. So do you reflect on that? Do you worry about
Yes.
people entering the profession, being deterred from entering the profession?
I'm worried about it a lot because we got a lot of calls. I mean, a lot of calls. And I am worried that there is going to be a chilling effect on the practice of law. And we've gotten a lot of calls from African-American males, white male, and so forth, who are worried about going into the field of criminal defense. And their fear is, how am I going to be able to take on this representation because it might ruin my career? And then my response is very simple. Don't do it then. If you cannot go in there all in with true representation, then this is not what you need to be doing. And I think you've heard, I am a big proponent of our United States Constitution. And so that has got to be the higher calling of, are you protecting the Constitution and protecting the human being's rights? And if that's what you're doing, you can represent anybody. If you start to pick and choose who you care about and don't care about and they're so forth, then you have a problem. If you go simply to the Rick Chow case, and I'm not saying I have a duty, but I tell people, what if Rick Chow was telling the truth?
Then he was found innocent.
And he was found not guilty. So if he's telling the truth, and, we've glazed over the fact Rick Chow's story and all of this thing is, yes, we were chasing this kid out of the store. We were 100%. And when we caught up to him, because we thought he had been shoplifting, turned out he wasn't. But before we could get there and ask him any questions, the young man turned and pointed a gun at my son. My son threw his hands up and said, help, daddy's got a gun. And my dad, Rick Chow, pointed a gun at him and said, drop the gun, drop it. And the son saw a gun pointed at him. The guy, he never dropped the gun, so he ended up shooting him. And when he was talked to 911, and the first statement was, look, I thought he was going to kill my son. So the question becomes this, Anoushka, if he's telling the truth, and I always say if because I wasn't there, but the jury heard this. If he's telling the truth and somebody is pointing a gun at his son and he 100% thought he was going to kill his son, because the culture doesn't like him, he doesn't deserve representation? And that becomes the issue as a criminal defense attorney. Do we worry more about the culture or worry about him? And the phrase is, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. That's a quote from Martin Luther King. And if we do not fight for justice for Rick Chow, how can we expect justice for anyone else in a civilized society? And so when people say, like what your phrase was, I'm not sure he should have taken that case. That's exactly the case I've got to take if I'm going to be a good attorney, not a good African-American attorney, a good blank. If I'm going to be any type of attorney, that's the case you take. You don't take the winning ones where everybody pats you on the back. You take the ones that protect him. And so you take that case and everybody hates you. But as you've seen, our closing argument and our trial was all over the country. Everybody's watching it. And then you watch the Carmelo Anthony trial and people say, he needs a good lawyer. You go hire him. So that's what they may have hated you, but they're just like, that's a guy who will fight for justice. We need him to fight for the other.
But there is an extra element to the career now. So if you're at law school, they should probably prep you. Like one day you might go viral on TikTok. And
they've got to now.
Yeah. Well, yeah. This is changing. This has changed the game. But then my other question is that you have a huge platform on TikTok. Someone like Brian Steele doesn't have a platform on TikTok, but has become kind of a name that's like wins unwinnable cases. There's a little bit with that with the Ignifolos. We've got that. And once that documentary comes out from 50 Cent, we'll have that.
We'll have that all over the place.
Exactly. Yeah. Is there potential that you're biasing jury pools all over the country? Because
Absolutely.
You are the celebrity and they're like, well, if this lawyer's taken this case, I feel differently about which way it's going to go as a juror. I follow this person. I've followed them for 3 years. I consume their content every day. I feel like I know them. Therefore, when they deliver their opening statements, their closing arguments, I feel like I'm talking to a friend is talking to me. Therefore, is there not an incentive on the other side of it for young lawyers to dedicate time to creating content over doing the damn job, right?
Yes. When I teach other lawyers in the country, I'm like, you guys better get with it. Get on social media. You have to, and I tell people to get on social media for 3 reasons. One, it helps you on your public speaking. It helps you getting and talking to some people, because lawyers get rusty talking in front of folks, and it helps you with your comfortability talking to a crowd. 2, you're talking to jurors. Everybody out there's a potential jury. So when people get these hate messages, it's stuff like, well, that's what juries are thinking. So we need to start watching this stuff, because you're able to talk to jurors over and over again. And 3, you're able to see how people react to you as a lawyer and as a person, and see if they have positive or negative reactions, and how you have to work on things. And you are influencing jury pools. You know, we on the Rick Chow case, if you were just to follow, and this goes back to one of the reasons that's bad, if you were just to follow what social media thought, they hated him. Still do. They haven't changed. They're not like, they hated him. And if you were to only focus on that, it was clear that there was going to be a guilty verdict. I think that was the mistake that the prosecution made, is they just focused on the world of the social media. And when you're picking a jury, your goal is not to pick people who are focused on social media. It's to pick 12 individuals who don't know anything about the case, who feel as though that they can be unbiased and impartial. And we were able to get 12 individuals. And some of the things we focus on, Anoushka, when we ask them questions is, are you on social media? And then we check their social media post.
So, but now do you need to check, are you on social media? Do you follow these content creators? Or do you follow
the lawyers?
Do you follow me?
Like, it's when we, that is a question that is always asked, by the way. Like, you ask the question, are you familiar with anyone in the case? Remember, you don't want anyone biased. You don't want my little brother who's sitting out there in the room. You don't want him on one of my juries. But
shout out to Terrence.
Yeah, what's up, T? I wouldn't want him on. Actually, I would not want my little brother on my jury. Let's be perfectly honest. I'm not putting him on a single jury I have. But if we can find out a little bit about the jury, you don't want their bias. So you want people very, very neutral. And when we were trying that case, we tried a very big case in Florence County on an Affordable Housing Act case. And the other side, they said, Your Honor, we want to know if people follow Shaun. Like, it was the first time I've ever heard it. We want to know, we know Mr. Kent has a very large TikTok platform. And the judge like, yeah, I follow him. I'm like, what in the world?
That's crazy, because that starts to feel like undermining the judicial process.
But we're people, and everybody forgets that. Like, we're just people who wants to follow and look at social media. But they're right. They wanted to know if anybody on the jury follows my social media content, because remember, when I talk about it, I'm a criminal defense attorney. So if someone's likely to follow me, they're likely to have biased leanings to a specific way. And so the other side wants to know that, to know if that's the type of person they want to strike from their jury. It's actually smart, like, if I had somebody who was following, and we ask these questions, do you donate to law enforcement? Do you have law enforcement to your family? The reason we want to know that is if you have leanings the other way, you're a pro cop, and so you're more likely to find someone guilty. So yeah, it is the new wave that we've got to know about your social media.
Yeah, but I just worry that people are going to be spending more time creating content than doing the actual job.
Oh, that's going to happen.
Content first lawyers.
Well, I think that's going to happen a lot. And that's one of the reasons, like, we refuse to monetize. Like, I will not. Like, I've heard somebody, oh, you need to monetize. I'm like, I'm not doing it, because I do not want to be the slave towards making money. Mine is just about, I like to educate.
I can't believe you're here in person. I'm going to prod you a couple more times when we're off air. But if you want to hear more about this, behind the scenes, some stuff that we haven't spoken about publicly before, come and see us at Crosswires.
Crosswires, I'm here. That's why I'm here.
Yeah, Shaun thinks Sheffield's in London, but that's okay. He gonna find out.
Sheffield is 100% in London, and so is Kent.
He's learning a lot. It's going to be an education over the next couple of days, but we are going to be there. We're on at 2:30 on Saturday, the 4th of July at the Cole Brothers venue.
What is the 4th of July Saturday? What is that? Anniversary of something?
And is it Rockets or Ramparts?
They're both in the song.
Oh, right.
You're going to learn the song by Saturday. Yeah. Sing the song.
Shout out to both the Rockets and the Ramparts.
There you go.
Shaun, it's been a pleasure having you here in person.
I'm so excited. Thank you all so much for having me. I'm so excited.
That was our resident trial attorney, Shaun Kent, from literally over there for the first time ever. And that's it for this episode of Fame Under Fire from BBC Sounds with me, Anoushka Mutanda-Dougherty. If you want to support this podcast on YouTube, please like, hype, and subscribe. And as always, keep sending us your questions. We love answering them.